Welcome back to Daybreak. Time now to get into bulls and bears, and of course our discussion today is about non-woven carrier bags. What are your thoughts about the directive by NEMA to have their use stopped, at least temporarily, and of course the High Court then saying we suspend that directive, for now you can use them. We'll get into that discussion shortly, but before that we have some breaking news coming into our newsroom that again former National Land Commission Chairperson Swazuri has been arrested together with 4 other land officials, arrested by the EACC this time, because last time it was the DCI that was on their radar, over compensation lapses. And of course, last year was also a very tough year for the former National Land Commission. He was charged in August alongside 11 other people over an SGR scam. Trevor, what else do we know?
That's exactly what's coming through to our newsrooms at this particular point. It's just he's been arrested, the chairperson, that's Mohamed Swazuri, over compensation for land acquired for the construction of the standard gauge railway, and this is something that is still ongoing. Last time, the police also arrested the Commission's Chief Executive Secretary, Chavangi Aziz Tom, and also the railways boss, Atanas Maina. 2 senior land commission directors were also arrested at that particular point. But today, so far, it's just Mohamed Swazuri who's been arrested again in regards to this compensation. They say the details about the specific charges of the 7 arrested officials were a bit scanty, but what we know at this particular point, it's in regards to the compensation of SGR.
Now, talking about compensation lapses, somewhere things did not go as expected, and that's what EACC is querying from this gentleman, former Land Commission Chairperson, together with 4 other land officials.
All right, we'll give you more details on that as and when it comes through to our newsrooms, and also find out if there's any more charges being leveled and if there's any more arrests that is going to be made in regards to the SGR compensation as well. But as we get into that discussion today, and the DG is saying that it's not a ban,
yes,
to move and carry bags, it's a directive.
Before we bring in the DG, we have online Sam Karanja, the CEO of the Importers and Small Traders Association of Kenya. They're the ones who moved to court. And they got the court, or the court agreed, sort of in a sense, agreed with their findings and what they presented, and said for now they've suspended that directive on non-woven carrier bags moving forward. Let's understand from Sam Karanja, why did you feel it necessary to challenge this decision by NEMA?
Thank you, Ahiga. What we did is that we found that there's no public participation, because most of the people who we deal with, because we are from Importers and Small Traders Association of Kenya, we deal with small, medium entrepreneurs, people who are actually importing those bags and also buying those bags from the manufacturers.
Okay.
And so now what happened is that as much as we saw it on the newspaper, we were not actually, as stakeholders, actually were not, there was no public participation, which was supposed to happen, because we didn't know the standardization that KEBS had already put in place. And that is the issue that we are having actually with some of the government agencies, because they make decisions without government participation. You find that they're making decisions and they're gazetting them, and they had not even come to the ground to see what's happening. And so you find that most of our members had stocked bags worth millions of shillings. Mm-hmm. And you find that the government wakes up in the morning and decides that this is not going to happen, and they have not given us the standardization of the bags. We are not per se fighting the government. What we are saying is this: can they give us the standardization? They give us time. And number 2, there should be what we call public participation, because one of the things they were saying is that it's toxic to the environment, and we are not refusing about the toxicity to the environment, given that they are supposed to come out clear. At the time they were banning, they had not even gotten the content of the toxicity of the bag. So it means that that's something that they woke up with, and they had not done their due diligence.
Okay.
Yes.
Sam, let me ask you this. So what if NEMA, and the Director General is here, what if NEMA tell us that they consulted several stakeholders, maybe just not your body? Again, what would that mean for you?
You see, the reason why we have government agencies and the reason why we pay them as taxpayers is to have vast consultation. So the moment they say that they had different stakeholders...
and I don't know, the DG will say, but I'm saying just, per chance, if
yes,
that will be their response.
You see, when you're talking about public participation, even in the Constitution, it means that you come to the grassroots. So did they come to the grassroots? So, or was it a board meeting that they called a few people and they came up with a decision? So that's something that they are supposed to look at. That's why actually the government agencies are supposed to be thorough. That's why they are paid. They are paid to be very thorough. They are supposed to come to the grassroots, not necessarily even through our association, though our association is nationwide, but even having meetings, even in Nyamakima, meetings in Gikomba, where actually people, we have big movers of these bags. So they can't just make decisions in the boardroom and call a few people who per se they can say they are representing us, and they have not done their due diligence that they are representing the common mananchi on the grassroots. So did Mama Mboga know about the toxicity of the bag? Did Mama Mboga know about the banning? Because as much as you're buying the fruits from the Mama Mboga, they also sell to you the bag at 10 shillings. So they stock a lot of bags. So what will they do with those bags? You see?
Sam, so what alternatives do you have at this particular point? Because the other option for NEMA is that they say that they need a central body to consult. They can't consult everyone. Yes.
And that's why we formed ISTA, Importers and Small Traders Association of Kenya, which is a nationwide association actually talking to small, medium entrepreneurs. You are an advocacy body on the same. And so NEMA should be able now to, as a government agency, look into the associations which actually now, who are the stakeholders in Kenya, because we are now organized and we have been there for about 2 years. We are now organized, we know what we are doing. And so there has to be consultation. Number two, when they are making decisions, let's say, for example, they banned the paper bags, and we were for that because that's something that they had done their due diligence. When they are waking up one morning to say that they are going to ban the bags, we are supposed to be given the standardization of the bags which are supposed to be sold in Kenya.
Okay.
And that standardization of the bags they're supposed to give to bring in Kenya, or they're supposed to to enforce in Kenya. The dissemination of information from the boardroom to the common mananchi.
Okay.
They are even supposed to print, even if it's through the newspapers, and also give out small flyers on the standardization of some of the goods that they have put in place. Because many people, when you're talking about banning of some even counterfeit, some people are very ignorant. If you come to the ground, Wahiga, you are going to find that they are very ignorant of even what is counterfeit.
Okay.
There are people who, yes.
Okay. All right, Karanja. That's Sam Karanja, CEO, Importers and Small Traders Association. And DG will come directly to you. He says first there was no public participation, there's no standardization, they don't know what next from here.
Thank you, Trevor. We are talking of a product which has no standard in the first place. And some would be interested to know that when this product came into the market,
the non-woven carrier bags.
Yes, we were aware. And at the time, and I agree with him, they supported us into bringing alternatives. That particular alternative, we had no problem with it at the time, even though we never outrightly said this is the alternative. But we preferred to the public a lot of alternatives that were likely to be considered as alternatives, because at the time the Kenya Association of Manufacturers was in denial. They were in court with us, and therefore they didn't provide to the market the alternatives.
What do you mean by they were in denial?
Well,
Mushai will confirm.
Mushai can confirm. He's here. He can, yeah. So now going back to Sam's perception of what public participation is, we as NEMA and the government have even told the Kenya Association of Manufacturers that we share the interest and protect the interest of the majority of Kenyans. And therefore, Sam's interest is for his constituency of people who are doing trade in this product. And therefore, he is not standing for the interests of consumers. Because as NEMA, our interest is to have the consumer buy a product for which a standard has been set and which is already approved as the alternative by the government. So this process may take a while. Yes, it is true we did participate in, we did public participation for the ban of carrier bags.
Yes.
But even that was questioned. The threshold of any participation is always debatable, and that is the correct point. So for now, we never approved this standard. We did not, and then therefore, again, the trust which we had on the quality, on the standard, perhaps let me the strength, eroded so fast that we had to use the precautionary principle. And the precautionary principle doesn't require necessarily to have public participation. We are doing the good of the nation. If you want to eradicate
So you're admitting that there was no public participation?
There did not necessarily have to be public participation. We did public participation for the implementation of the plastic carrier bags. Yeah. And I think Mushai will agree with me that public participation was required. We, even now, even by the time that we gave this directive, yeah, the first thing we did, we talked to industry through KAM and told them we are concerned about the quality of the product which is being presented as an alternative. Okay. It was cheaper, it's going fast. At first, you know, there were very few people who were producing it. Yeah. And then people started importing machines and also the cloth to make it, the reel to make it, yeah, and therefore it proliferated very fast. The quality deteriorated so fast, yeah, and then the concern now came in. We gave them a month, we gave industry a month, yeah, to discontinue, use it. Then they came.
But who failed who here? You say the standards weren't set, but yet you allowed the products to come into the market. Whose failure is that?
It is nobody's failure.
Somebody has to take responsibility, Bwana.
Not necessarily.
The paper, the women carrier bags came in, now you say they're not up to standard, but they came in anyway. At that point, wasn't that the point where it was supposed to be stopped?
If somebody has to take the blame, the industry, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, but more importantly, the importers, SAM's constituency itself, because they started with a product which was acceptable and now got us to a product which is unacceptable. And I hope he can actually own up to that, that initially what we saw was acceptable and what we have now is unacceptable.
What's the definition of acceptable? Was it a particular thickness? Was it a particular size? What was acceptable then that has changed?
A lot happened at the time, okay, because we had no alternatives to show to Kenyans. And at the time, what we were saying is that anything plastic, we don't want it.
Okay.
And then this was also plastic, but it was thick enough, it was reusable. So that aspect of reusability, multiple use, made us allow it.
So the quality deteriorated over time?
Over time. And this is, so we now decided, let us use the precautionary principle, because it was getting to a runaway situation. And if we didn't act, then we were going to find ourselves back to the same hole we were in when we had the plastic carrier bags and flat bags.
Okay, Mushai, you've been referenced once or twice. I can give you a chance to weigh in on this. Give us your opening statement on the same.
Yeah, okay. I think the whole area of plastics is a long-standing issue, which is becoming a global issue anyway. It's being discussed, it's not just in Kenya. Mm-hmm. So I think in Kenya we are grappling with how do we localize this issue and deal with it. And there's a lot of waste and littering all over the place, which we know is not useful for the environment. And plastic has many uses, but none in the environment when it is in the water or hanging around there, but it has many other uses. I think on this particular one, on the non-woven, one of the issues always with the regulators is to understand how quickly markets move. And markets and business is going to move much faster than regulators at all stages. And this is why we actually, one of our key recommendations, and we have been in discussions with NEMA, is about how do you need to give people time and notice. That is usually one of the issues. So when we are changing, give people sufficient time. Currently, actually, the issue with the non-woven PPP bags is the standards. And it's correct in terms of and again, we will not relitigate, but this was our issue when the first plastic bag came. We said, what are the alternatives? Mm-hmm. Okay? Because we are saying that the alternatives, where are they? And is the market ready for them? Is there anything in the market that is going to take over this? And even then, the issue was the length of time. We were like, in Europe, is it last month? They've banned single-use plastic, but they've banned it in 2021.
No, so
they tell people from 2021 you'll not be able to use straws, all these things. Mm-hmm. That gives industry time to come up with alternatives, to develop factories to make these things, supply chains to do all those things. Everybody knows, and this is a story. It even gives you time for that public participation. You can start informing people. But when we've only got 3 months, it's also difficult for the guys saying Gikomba or like Mr. Karanja was complaining about. It is hard for the information to trickle down to everybody. So sometimes time can solve those issues. So at the moment, what we are trying to do for these bags is get a standard. I think the DG is correct. When it was opened up and this was an alternative bag, there was a particular thickness. In fact, even the first bags that were there, they had a particular gauge that they had, which was about the, I think you can either use microns or grams per square meter is what we are working on at the moment. So we've been engaging with KEBS. Again, we have different government bodies.
That you need to deal with?
That KEBS are the ones who set the standard, but NEMA has an environmental, they have authority over the environment, etc. So we've been engaging with KEBS to set a standard for these bags. At the moment, the agreed position from the manufacturers, from the manufacturer's perspective, is to have a 50 GSM bag as the minimum. And what has actually happened as of this month, all the manufacturers, there are only about 8 manufacturers who make the material itself, came together and have signed an MOU among themselves and said, even now, we are going to make bags at 50. We are not going to go lower. Because what was happening, it's usually a competitive thing. If you go lower, the bag is cheaper. But if we all agree that this is the standard which we are going to do, and so we've managed to come together and agree that, look, let's not go below 50 because 50 is going to create other problems for us altogether. So that is already happening. What KEBS has published the first draft of the standard, and we are now working with them together with NEMA also to make sure that we get that standard.
All that thought on the standards. We have a caller from Kirinyaga, Joshua. Joshua, good morning.
Morning, Trevor.
Yes, go ahead with the comment or question, Joshua.
Yes, I have a question for the NEMA official.
Yes.
On my table is a plastic bag, I think the bread wrappers.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know, when they talked about plastic, what was their definition of plastic bags?
Okay.
That's one. Number two, allow me to weigh in on the housing tax.
Okay.
Okay, briefly.
I don't know what happened to someone who is working and is eligible to the deduction, yet they have houses. I thought these are some of the things that the citizens are supposed to make decisions on. I don't think the government has any business trying to decide on who wants to own a house or who doesn't want to own a house. I think those are personal decisions that the government has no power to control over. And again, you cannot use low-income earners to fund middle-class housing establishments in the country. I think it's just out of order, and we need to really sober up as a country. And lastly, Trevor.
Yes.
I've seen the breaking news on the screens.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think on a light note, I would suggest that we call this heartbreaking news. I think Kenyans are tired of breaking news of people being arrested and nothing happens. This is, I think, the update says that Swazuri is being arrested and nothing is coming out of it. So please, thank you.
All right.
Heartbreaking
Thanks, Joshua.
news. My goodness. Enjoy your breakfast, Joshua. You've got some bread on the table ahead of you. He's asked you some questions. He's asking about his bread wrapper and the category of plastic bags that are still allowed, what's permitted, what's not.
But Bushai was also finishing his thoughts on the standardization preparations between CAM and KEBS as well.
Yes. So I was just saying we are engaged in that conversation, and we are actually hoping, I think the deadline we had was for September this year, because there's a process that goes through KEBS to get a standard. So this will be the agreed standard on what the bag's thickness is. And like the DG mentioned, the main thing that we kind of have coalesced about is that we need a bag that is more than single use. So it's a bag that can be used multiple times, because that is the problem. The plastic is useful, but it's probably a bit wasteful, even cost-wise, to use a bag once and then it rips or it is no longer usable. But how can we use a bag how can we make a bag that can be used multiple times? That's the main aim.
All right.
Okay, Bona DG, some questions were asked.
Yeah. Just for clarity.
Yes, please.
What we banned as plastic are carrier bags and flat bags. And I think it was clear to a lot of Kenyans, and I think why Joshua is asking this is because of bread. And bread is wrapped, of course, in plastic. Now, during the implementation of the ban, we did exemptions. And that's why we were doing clearances for primary packaging, that is packaging which is done at industrial setting, for reasons including reasons of health, the safety of the product, and particularly where it's food. So we did not exempt bread, but we have been working with bread industry for all the time, and it's not bread alone, even tree seedling industry. We've been working with KEFRI, Kenya Forest Service, and also KEBS. to develop a standard for those exemptions. A standard for bread, a standard for tree seedlings, a standard for the industry that takes away trash. So bean bags, for example, bean liners. So we are developing those. And for bread, we are at a very advanced stage. We've been having meetings, and Cam knows, we have structured meetings with those industries. And for seedlings also include seedlings for, say, tea, coffee, and all other foodstuffs, flowers, etc. And therefore, when it comes, when those standards are developed, we'll show. So for now, what we have are exemptions. So and we have reasons to keep those exemptions. And we are happy as government to have those exemptions, because then we have industry continuing as we negotiate with them. So you can see that we have a lot of consultations, and this public participation thing is something we understand very well. I want to just touch on what Muchai has said, so that we don't create the impression that we have already agreed on a standard that is 50 GSM.
We are discussing. Yeah.
Yes, we are discussing.
You're discussing.
Yeah, but let it be understood that that is their proposal.
That is our proposal.
Yeah, which we have no problem with. We have our own proposal, and we don't have a problem agreeing on that. We think we are going to agree on a standard, because as he said, what's important is reusability, particularly something even washability, because the microbial load that is going to be found, even if I agree with some that we haven't done any test on toxicity yet, which we are doing for us to come with a standard, the precautionary principle is what we use, because the microbial load on the fabric of that non-woven bag can be quite high. Because this thing,
for the benefit of our viewers, microbial load, in simple terms, is what?
If you carry, for example, meat in that bag, and you carry vegetables, and you carry a lot of that, and you are trying to keep it clean, how much of different
things can
microbes or germs are going to be loaded into that fabric, and so that it can be safe and whatever. So all the standards we develop are likely to be food grade material, which can safely carry our product. And therefore, it's not just, you know, how beautiful it looks when you carry it around, because when we presented the alternatives with Muchai, we got a bit of flack, especially from men saying, are you saying we carry Kiondos and all that kind of thing? That's not the point. Finally, when we develop a product with KEBS and the industry, it is something which is acceptable, and there are many considerations for that.
How much of this is an opportunity for the local manufacturers? And Muchai, I'd like you to also weigh in on that, because you've been dealing with them a lot. What have you seen some options from the young entrepreneurs in Kenya who say, we have these bags that are biodegradable, we are willing to produce them in mass, we just need the opportunity? Because we meet them out there and they say the government is not giving us a chance to show what we have. Because at the end of it all, we can make these bags locally, but we'll end up importing them.
I think the whole thing around plastics has been, although there's a big problem with plastic waste, and I think that is really what our position we try to put forward to government and environmentalists and so on, that the problem is plastic waste. The uses of plastics are multiple, and we need it. The way we have come to live and the way our societies have developed, we have plastic everywhere. Like he's mentioned already, for bread, the soft bread, the main reason you use plastic for that is the life of the bread. If you wrap it in paper, because it is soft, it's a soft crust, the bread will go bad very quickly. Plastics is used, for instance, in diapers, in sanitary pads, in some of our ties and whatever we are wearing, our buttons. Plastic is used in so many places. In fact, there was a series on BBC called 50 Things That Changed the World by an economist called Tim Harford. And one of the things is plastic.
It's plastics.
It has changed how we live as urban people.
We use it in every part of our lives.
So it is all over the place. It is everywhere. Now, the plastic waste is a problem. And in fact, one of our issues is, for the young people and the new investment we are looking at, is, I think, geared towards plastic waste. Because the way to use, one of the key benefits of plastic is its life. It can last forever, and it can be recycled and recycled and recycled. But there is no investment in Kenya at the moment, not significant investment in the recycling. The challenge being, and now technology is growing and alternatives are growing on how to recycle, is that it is unclear what the policy and the strategy is of government. So, for instance, if you are recycling bags, if you want to recycle the non-woven PPP bags, you don't know whether the bags are going to be there 3 years from now, 4 years from now. So we are encouraging government, and we are actually preparing as KAM what we are calling, and other stakeholders in the sector, a Kenya Plastics Action Plan, which we are saying this is our proposal for a 2030, 2040 plan for what do we do with plastics. That will help people invest. That will help one of the small investors you're saying bringing in alternatives. One of their challenges is scale. Because if you go to a supermarket, they don't want 10 bags a day. They want, 400 bags a day or whatever, so many bags a day. So it's your ability to go up to scale on production. So there is opportunity for investment and growth with new ideas, but we need clarity on what we are going to do with plastics in the long term, because we are going to need them, like is mentioned, for food, for waste, etc. But what we don't need is plastics in the environment, and we have some proposals.
That you are clear about.
That one we are clear about. That
Okay.
waste is the problem. We've got, for instance, this year or last year and rolling into this year, we helped formed PETCO, which is an organization where people who make PET bottles are contributing to, and we are helping the collection of these bottles to enable them to be recycled. And we are funding recyclers and also funding collectors through the recyclers, so that more of these bottles are collected and can be given a useful life. The model that we are using is like scrap metal.
Okay.
It's rare to get a nail in your tire these days for a puncture, because everybody collects all the nails.
Okay.
Because they can be sold as scrap metal,
There's a
because they have a
business
value.
My goodness.
There's people collecting them. So we
Yes.
think if we can do that for plastic, there's already now, it's called an extended producer responsibility scheme and take-back schemes. If we can start implementing those, we'll have some way forward on the plastic litter. Because the plastic is, I like telling people, the plastic is innocent. It is the people who are littering and being able to collect it back. That's where the problem is.
Good. We're almost due for a break, and of course, this is a conversation we'll be carrying on after the break. But before that, I want to continue updating you regarding that breaking story. We now have the press release by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Absolutely. And they're saying that this is the file. It relates to allegations of irregular payment of compensation by the National Land Commission to Tornado Carriers Limited for compulsory acquisition for land. And the interesting thing is they're saying that this land was valued in 2015, I believe, at about 34 million shillings, 501,000 shillings, 110 to be specific. But they're saying that after another valuation was done, which is why the investigation has come up, the same land was valued at 109 million shillings, 769,363.
Something
so that's
else.
almost 4 times.
Four times the
price
amount.
it was,
My
yeah.
goodness, some of these things you'd only read them in mystery novels.
Yes.
Something else here that's interesting, the EACC apparently received an anonymous report concerning this irregular payment to NLC officials, private persons and entities. So there's some good Samaritan out there who's furnished this
doing a part in
information.
fighting graft,
And of course, I'm sure that will be one of the big discussions. Who is this? And the list there is of about 24 individuals.
Yes.
And of course, at the very top of that list is the NLC chairperson, Professor Mohamed Swazuri,
who's now been arrested.
a commissioner with the NLC, different employees within the NLC, and business people, business persons as well.
So the main concern here is on the strength of the second valuation, where they're saying the price of the land almost tripled, and the DPP has directed that the above named people, which is about 24 of them, most of them from NLC, and some business people,
And some of their spouses.
Tornado Carriers. They say they're going to be charged with several offenses, one being conspiracy to commit an economic crime. There's abuse of office as well, financial misconduct.
We also have unlawful acquisition of public property, the fraudulent acquisition as well, dealing with suspect property, and this one, an interesting one, money laundering.
Exactly. Because of the tripled amount of that land after the initial valuation of 34 million, it sprung up to 109
Because once that money shows up in an account, now what do you do with it? Where did you get the money from?
Exactly.
So I believe some money laundering also came into play in this as well. So that's what we know so far.
Exactly.
On this
give you
matter.
more details, but this is generally what we have. And concerning the arrest of the NLC former NLC chairperson Mohamed Swazuri, 24 others are also being looked for. We'll give you an update whether they've been arrested. Most of them are NLC officials, as we can see from the statement from the DPP as well.
Right. We also have some tweets which we'll be reading after this break. Of course, our focus today is we're talking about the directive to suspend the use of non-woven carrier bags and the fact that the High Court suspended that directive directive, so you can use non-woven carrier bags according to the court for now. But what is the way forward? Can we?
Let's see what you're saying. 22422 coming up on your screen. No, you wanted to find out if you can use.
You know, I noticed he smiled as I mentioned that.
Let's get that answer first before we see what Kenyans are saying.
So for now, you're waiting on what the court will say before implementing your the suspension of the use of these bags.
So we don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
And as Mushai said, it's the law.
It's the law.
We follow the law.
So the guys who are saying that they have already some at the port can clear them. Or what happens in that case?
I believe business people are smarter than that. Let us not pretend that guys who do business don't know what they are doing.
Yeah.
One problem we have in Kenya, and Mushai has said, they need the government to be predictable. But government is very predictable. Okay. Let me say, from my experience, like when there is purported to be lack of enough information, you know what people come to ask us? Everyone wants to be there when no one else is there. Even if it's an opportunity for 1 month to sell contraband, provided they are alone or they want to control information that we have. Like, for example, now, a lot of people are asking, how long do you think the court will have this coming? And that's why when you ask me the question, should the people who have stocks at the port clear them? And that's a difficult question for me to answer because this case is in court. The desire of the government is to have that happen tomorrow.
Okay.
But we have the law take its course. So what I think is important is sustainability.
Okay.
Because even for us, when we allowed this to happen, the product was good. And then it went south.
It went south.
To speak.
Okay.
And now we have this situation.
All right.
What is important is, can we all, because we are business people are very smart at that, can we direct that smartness to sustainability, for example. If you think this is only for today and tomorrow, why even get into it? And we are there.
Read between the lines.
Yes.
Look at the future. Don't think short term.
And what I believe is that somebody who already doesn't want to read or to talk to government to see where we want to go is a person who already has an intention to do the wrong thing. Or to be selling contraband.
All right, let's take a short break. Vijay, I know you want to dive in, but also...
He sent a strong message, but which can be responded to after the break.
And also when we come back, we talk about PET bottles. You're saying that there's a collection system of it and Petco is involved and WeCo now as well, like a recycling company. We'll talk about that as well because there was also a looming ban on that. There was people were wondering, will that be banned as well?
Plastic bottles are also a big issue in the country.
There's also a big issue.
Yes.
Yeah, and when we come back, we'll also read some of your feedback on 22422. The hashtag is Daybreak. You can also call in 0719 777 Trevor Mbija, Waiga Moura, Zinzi K. See you in a bit.
Shinda mamilioni ya pesa kwenye Jipange na View sasa. Ni rahisi. Nenda kwa lipa na M-Pesa, paybill number 724177. Kisha weka nambari yako ya simu kama account number, alafu ulipe shilingi 10